Welcome to the Hearts Entwined podcast. In this podcast, we'll be having discussions around the secrets which attract lasting, healthy, fulfilling relationships, creating a healthy mindset, and what women should know and understand about men. Introducing your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts, relationship expert, trainer, speaker, and best-selling author of the Cupid's Bow technique. Lyn's mission is to have a positive impact in reducing divorce, domestic violence, and suicide.
Welcome to the Hearts Entwined podcast. This is your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts. And today I've got a lovely returning guest. She's a very popular guest on my show. Her name is Fraser. She's a relationship coach. And if you haven't already heard our previous conversation, then do please, if you're new to this, go back and have a look at our previous episode, which was entitled Breaking Up with a Narcissist. So that was our previous episode that we discussed. So welcome back, Marie.
Thank you, Lyn. I'm delighted to be here. Always lovely to talk to you. So thanks for having me back.
You're very welcome. And it's a very important subject you discussed, because I think sometimes, a lot of women and men suffer in silence around this particular topic, don't they? They don't necessarily ever get out of those relationships.
Oh, for sure. And I think one of the reasons that a lot of people don't discuss it is, there's a lot of shame around emotional abuse, because, you can go into that relationship as a, confident, together person. And depending, you could be with a narcissist for 6 weeks or 60 years, but the damage they can do in even such a short space of time is incredibly pervasive. And, it takes a long time for you to figure out what the hell happened. I mean, a classic example, I was talking to a new client yesterday who's been subjected to this form of emotional abuse for 4 weeks. And it's had such a dramatic effect on her, bless her. She's had to come off work and go to see the doctor because she cannot understand what's happened, all the love bombing, et cetera, and, and then the next minute, the sort of gaslighting and manipulation. So there's a lot of shame that goes with this sort of abuse, because one, you can't believe it's happened. Two, you've lost a sense of who you are, which can be quite shameful. And the most importantly, and certainly for me, I actually didn't want to admit to the rest of the world that I had been subjected to that sort of abuse. I was ashamed of it. So, yeah, it's, and this is the reason why I'm happy to talk about it. It's nothing to be ashamed of. These people are incredibly manipulative. They are really dangerous people emotionally. And the more that people talk about it, then hopefully it will encourage other people who are suffering or have suffered to, recognize that it's not just them.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for your insights around narcissism, and obviously this is on the back of your own experience too, which is all credit to you for being one of those people that is able to speak out and help others now. So I'm very grateful for that. So in this particular episode, what we wanted to sort of move on to focus on around was how to rebuild your life, yourself after that sort of narcissistic abuse. But before we delve into that, Marie, I'd just like to, just recap a little bit for those people that are new to this word narcissism, on what that actually means in terms of the traits that somebody displays.
Well, the most common ones are initially what we call love bombing. So they could be calling you, texting you, messaging you 20, 30 plus times a day. And that makes you feel as though you are the only person in the world that matters to them. And, from my personal experience, I was married to a narcissist for 27 years. I mean, I didn't realize that. I just thought he was slightly cookie in the beginning. But, a sense of sort of arrogance, which, I put down to confidence, but, it was arrogance. There's no, a narcissist will never be wrong. They will convince you or try to convince you that black is white. It's, and this is why narcissism is really hard to treat, because they don't believe there's anything wrong with them. So everything is your fault. And so from the love bombing, there can be then, you can go on to situations where, this is a classic that used to happen to me a lot. The guy would say, I mean, obviously there are women narcissists too. He would say, oh, right, I'm going off on this trip and, for whenever. And I'd say, well, hang on a minute. I don't know about this. Could you just, give me some background? You've not told me. Yes, I have. Yes, I have. And so there'd be this argument. I knew he hadn't told me, but then what that does over time, it then makes you question, what did I miss? It must be me. It must be me. So you then start to blame yourself because, oh, I don't know why I would have remembered that name. This must be me. And also, being really, really sort of mean in some of the comments that they may make. Oh, you're a psycho or something like that, just because they're not agreeing with you. And then when you confront them, it's, well, I didn't really mean that, but it's because they can't actually cope with you questioning that, you don't agree with them. And then what happens is, and certainly what happened with me, is that you just get so exhausted with the arguments that you then just think, do you know what? Oh, just let it go. And to a certain extent, that is the worst thing you can do, because you're just building up this anxiety within of questioning yourself. Your confidence just, shatters. Your self-esteem shatters. And you just don't know who you are. It's almost as though you're being controlled, which is what narcissists love to do. They want to control you. And, when I have people, come to me and we talk about narcissism, can I get him help or can I get her help? Will she change? My advice is run as fast as you can in the opposite direction, because it is incredibly hard to treat. Now, these are just a few examples that I've given. We could talk all day about, traits and what have you, but, manipulation, which leads to you questioning your sanity and, then blaming yourself that you've got hold of the wrong end of the stick, when in fact you haven't got hold of the wrong end of the stick. And, going with your gut reactions is usually, well, I've never known my gut reaction not to be spot on. It's just that you then lose the confidence to sort of trust your instincts.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So, we did go into, as I said in a previous episode, quite a lot around the different things that are the traits of a narcissist. So if for those that are interested in that, on the previous episode I did with Marie, then there is that one to delve into. But on this particular episode, we wanted to talk about moving on from that and how to rebuild your life afterwards, because obviously there's a lot of pain to heal, isn't there, on the back of all this?
Oh, for sure. I mean, an enormous amount of pain, which is something, to be honest with you, you can't describe, because, let's face it, we're all unique individuals, and how we process our emotions are as unique. Somebody might not have the same physical experience of an emotion that somebody else does. There is the pain, etc., but it is a very, very unique experience. And I think initially certainly for me and, you know, quite a few of the people that I've worked with, there's this fog of disbelief. And, you know, I would just suggest that anybody who is, you know, coming out of a breakup with a narcissist is to basically almost like take your time to process where you are now, because quite frankly, you are not the same person that you were when you went into this relationship, that you are coming out of it. And it's almost like trying to get to know yourself again, because, you know, your confidence will be pretty shattered. Your self-esteem will be rock bottom, because, you know, they're very manipulative in saying quite hurtful things that when you question, oh, I didn't mean it like that, but they did. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, if you keep banging your hammer with a thumb, you know, your thumb with a hammer over the time, you don't start to feel it. So when that sort of thing keeps happening, you don't react to it, but, you know, every cell in your body is taking it in as, you know, I'm not good enough, you know, it's my fault, etc., etc. So it does, you know, it takes a lot of work to actually recover from that. But, you know, people don't be afraid that it's, you know, you're going to feel like this forever, because I promise you won't. And, you know, all breakups are painful. You know, there's the grieving process to go through. You know, it is a loss, there is grief. And, you know, when your confidence and self-esteem are pretty rock bottom, you know, you've got these thoughts of, I'm going to be on my own. What am I going to do? Nobody's going to love me, etc., etc. And it's not true. It's absolutely not true at all. But you do have to sort of, you know, dust yourself down and, you know, march forward in a positive way, which in the early days is very difficult. But it's going through that pain and going through that grief of facing those emotions head on, because emotions have absolutely zero logic. There is no logic to emotions at all, and they will always win over logic. So, you know, you may logically think, oh, you know, I need to get out of this relationship. You know, this is really toxic. But emotionally, you know, you may feel you still love that person. So there's a disconnect there. So the emotion, you know, will always win. But once you have broken free from that toxicity, is then to, you know, face whatever emotion is coming up for you. You know, it might be guilt, it might be shame, it might be resentment, bitterness, anger, all these sorts of things. And these are incredibly dysregulating emotions, and they need to be processed, because unprocessed emotions will just sit in the body, in the mind. And if you suppress them, push them down, ignore them, they will come back to bite you on the backside, because it's a bit like opening Pandora's box.
Yeah.
And sorry, I can go on forever without taking a breath.
No, I was gonna say, yeah, I wanted to sort of reinforce that it is very important to confront and deal with those emotions, because, like you say, if you keep them suppressed and you know, just sweep them under the carpet, all you're doing is hurting yourself, because at some point, you know, that's going to manifest in probably illness, and probably severe illness.
Emotional pain can and does manifest into physical pain. You know, so for example, the likes of things like, you know, ME and fibromyalgia, you know, there's no real known cause for, you know, these particular diagnosis. And, you know, sometimes, you know, they're saying they're stress related. I mean, stress in the body is incredibly toxic, because what it does is it puts us in that fight or flight mode all the time. And what we're doing, we've got cortisol rushing round, and, you know, noradrenaline rushing round, so that we're on high alert all the time, rather than, you know, trying to sort of have our system balanced.
Yeah, absolutely. I can relate to that. You know, I've been through trauma myself, and I can remember having those conversations with somebody who was an influencer to me, and I didn't realize that I'd been living on high alert for decades, and what damage that was doing, on my body, because I thought always that I've been a very laid back, easygoing person on the outside, but obviously internally that wasn't the case.
Absolutely. I mean, living with someone like that, you're permanently on eggshells, because you don't want, you're frightened of saying this, you're frightened of doing that, because you don't want to upset the apple cart. And especially if you have, young children, you're trying to keep the peace, and, that just totally, exacerbates your your physiology and your mental wellness.
I think the other thing to reinforce as well is not suppressing your emotions, realizing that if you're dealing with your emotions, obviously that's a lot healthier, but also if you're not suppressing your emotions, maybe then you're impacting other people outside of yourself by lashing out on those people that haven't hurt you, because that's the way you're dealing with it rather than in a healthy way.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really excellent point, Lyn, because people, I've seen this happen, that the people who are there to help, you're not used to having that, or, you're still trying to process. So you do lash out. I mean, I can remember lashing out to my family, my sister and my mother, and they'd say, it's the best thing that you've done. And, and I was shouting, could you just stop it? And, I don't want to discuss it. And I just need to try and figure this out myself. And yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly, incredibly dysregulating situation to be in. I think it's worse. It is the worst form of a relationship breakup from a narcissist, because, they will still have their claws into you. I mean, what I did, and I think I mentioned in the last podcast, is that I cut off all communication, everything from the ex, because I didn't want to be reminded or hounded. And then I was really scared of being weak and going back. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I needed to just be on my own and not have that distraction, which was really, really helpful. And I know the worst thing that you can do is to continue communication, because then they're not going to change. I mean, if there are people listening that have children, I did make very strict boundaries with regard to, I would only communicate via email if it was to do with the children. And that's another thing, is then learning in the rebuilding process, is learning to set your boundaries, because when you're in a relationship with a narcissist, they violate your boundaries. Whatever boundaries that you've had in place before that relationship, they will be violated right, left, and centre. And I just certainly got to the point where I just allowed it to happen. And so there is an element of taking responsibility for your part in that relationship, because we do play a part. Yeah. I don't like to use the term victim. No. I just put it, my experience is that I was in a relationship with a narcissist, and I endured years of emotional abuse. I could have left years ago. I didn't. Do you know what I mean? So there was a part that I played in that. And I think to actually act of your control in the early days, you know what I mean, while you're trying to rebuild.
Okay, so initially, when you're speaking to somebody that, has obviously been in one of these relationships, or is currently still in one of these relationships, when you talk about dealing with those negative emotions attached to that particular relationship, what's the first step or advice or guidance you give on that, Marie?
The first thing I said to people is to be, start to learn to be kind to yourself. don't beat yourself up. You know, you're human, you love this person, and that whilst I've just talked about taking some responsibility for being in that relationship, it's starting to, you know, recognize that you are worth it. You know, you are worth more than what you've endured, and that you are lovable, and that you can build this life for yourself. And that sounds like a monumental task. You know, it sounds huge when you're at rock bottom. And it's just basically putting in the foundations of learning to love yourself by getting to know yourself again. Because I certainly didn't know who the hell I was out of that relationship. And a lot of people I talk to have lost all sense of who they are. And it's getting to know yourself again, because as I said earlier, you know, you're not the same person you were when you went into this relationship. I mean, we all of us, even happy relationships, we change during these relationships. And, you know, hopefully you change and grow together, or you change and grow apart. You know, there's no hard and fast rules to that. But certainly is to learn to get to know yourself again. What is it that you want? What is it that you don't want? And, you know, it might be initially you just don't know. The only thing that you do want is the pain to go away. And then it's to, you know, I work with the people, with people on that pain, and building their confidence and self-esteem, getting to know themselves. You know, there's no flick of a switch. And unfortunately, and of course, everybody's different. You know, people, you know, there may be, I mean, what I do say, and I will say it again, is please don't self-soothe on drink, drugs, etc. You know, to make the problem go away, because that will just not be helpful for you in the long term.
I always think, you know, it's worth, you know, discussing with people that have been on the end of these sort of emotional abuse relationships to think about, you know, the healthy alternatives. In other words, like you say, it can be quite easy to sort of go to the doctors, get prescription pills, and maybe that might be a short-term fix, as well as self-abuse, you know, on drink, drugs, and other addictions, which aren't necessarily the best course of action to overcome your initial pain. But there are healthier other things, such as, you know, journaling, writing down how you're feeling, even writing letters to the person that's caused the abuse, with obviously no intention of sending them, as a way of processing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, so is to get everything that, I mean, look, I woke up every single morning like I'd been in a train crash. There was so much stuff going through my head. Why this? What if that? How could he? What was I thinking? All that stuff, the self-talk was just enough to drive anybody crackers. And I found journaling incredibly helpful. You know, even before I got out of bed, would be, I'd, you know, have my notebook there, and I would just write out whatever was going into my head. Sometimes I'd read it back. I mean, none of it made any sense, but it was just, as I say, a complete and utter brain dump. And I found that really, really helpful. You know, there's lots of things that I recommend, you know, sort of depending on the individual. You know, I think yoga and Pilates, those sorts of exercises are incredibly helpful. Personally, I'm a tree hugger. So I love to get out into nature. And, you know, I took up photography when I broke up. So that was a wonderful distraction for me. You know, I didn't know one end of a camera from another. So, you know, doing things for yourself, but also that, you know, take your mind away from that constant inner critic, inner chatter.
You know, things that probably you used to do before you met this person that you gave up, or even, you know, things that you wanted to try that, you know, arts and crafts, for example, that you never got around to whilst you was with this person are good, very therapeutic things to get into, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And the other thing, I mean, that was a really good point. I mean, I gave up all my friends because he was so rude to my friends. even in the early days, and I don't know but anyway, there you go. So he would embarrass me terribly. And I just thought, oh, do you know what? I just can't go through that. So I gave up my friends for him. And so what happened when I was then on my own, I got in touch with them. Some didn't bother getting in touch back, which I could understand, but then, and some did. And we formed, great friendships again. So yeah, it's a really good point. Whatever, you gave up that you really enjoyed doing, give it another go. It might not float your boat now, but it might float your boat again. But certainly other things. I mean, crafting, painting, all these sort of creative things are wonderful because they're using the sort of right side of the brain, which is, you're concentrating on that. So the logical side is not actually, engaged. And it's incredibly therapeutic. I mean, there are art therapists and what have you out there, but like you say, all sorts of crafting things you can do. I mean, look at Tom Daley when he's killing time. He sits there knitting. I mean, I think that's marvellous.
For those that don't know, Tom Daley is a British Olympian diver. And yeah, and he always makes us smile because whilst he's waiting to take his next dive, he's crocheting or knitting, isn't he? Love it. And you don't need to be good at these things necessarily. I mean, we all have to start somewhere, don't we? So even, if you've never tried any of these things in decades or never tried them before at all, it's worth giving it a go. And even if you never become, very good at it, if you find it therapeutic, you find it therapeutic, and it's all very cathartic in helping the healing process in a healthy way, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's people that I've encountered, they've done all sorts of things, from sort of going off rambling to potholing, what's that thing with a parapont, not throwing yourself off a cliff, but
paragliding.
Yeah, that's the word. All sorts of things. And it's interesting because, you will come out of this so much stronger. And you'll be so proud of yourself. Honestly, I can promise you that you'll be so proud of yourself and look back on the journey that you went to, because every day you'll be moving forward. And it's sort of, journaling is so good because if you are writing your emotions and what have you down, you could then look back on the previous week, the previous month, and then the previous year and think, wow, look what I've managed to do. But it's also one of what I think is a really therapeutic aid is acknowledging your steps forward, no matter how small they might be to you. It's just saying, do you know what? I actually feel better today. I haven't thought about it as much today, or what have you. What do you think of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Give yourself a pat on the back for any little win. And also, Marie, I suppose, just lost my train of thought then. Not only acknowledging every little win, but also, how do you advise somebody that's dealing with feeling stuck because they're worried about what anybody else might think, the friends, the family, and that shame and guilt is keeping them stuck to some degree?
I so can relate to this, because when I separated, my boys were in their teens, and I was not prepared personally to be public with what are my personal experience, because I didn't want them reading stuff. Because one of the most important things to me was to not name, call, or denigrate their father, because at the end of the day, he is their father, and they've got 50% of his DNA. So it was very important to me that I always I showed a positive light to them about their father, and that took a great deal of strength, because this was somebody who had, I felt, ruined my life. But on the other hand, my children were far more important than the way that I was feeling. But then when they got a bit older, I just thought, sod it. They need to know me. This is me. This has been my journey. I am today the person I am because of what I've experienced. And also, I think it's really important because I have boys. I've always brought them up to be respectful of women, that I'm quite old fashioned, you give up your seat, you open the door, etc., both of which, are very, very respectful of women. But on the other hand, in a man's world, they also need to understand that in a woman's world, it's not all flowers and roses. And that also I wanted them to understand that there are strong women out there, like their mother, and that, strong women are not always, deserve the bad press that they get. I can remember, in the 80s when, I was sort of, assertive, aggressive for this and that, people at work would think that. I'm not that at all. And I wanted my kids to know that this is how strong women are, and, get used to it, and respect them for that. And, that might seem sort of a real monumental task for people listening at the moment who are perhaps in the early stages of their breakup. But, you will get through this and you will come out stronger because of what you've experienced. Women have this amazing emotional strength once we put our mind to it. And so, if you don't feel like talking to anybody at the moment, then don't, because there's nothing worse than doing things that aren't aligned to you. But if you feel as though your head is about to explode because you perhaps feel as though there isn't anybody in your circle that you can talk to, then I would strongly recommend that you talk to a professional. I don't know, whatever's available in everybody's area, but certainly some, I think anybody who's really been exposed to long-term emotional abuse does need some form of therapy. I know that's a hugely generalized statement, but on the other hand, because we blame ourselves for the situations that we've endured, it doesn't help us to understand the process of why we did what we did. And everybody, we all want an answer to why we endured that, and so that we can get closure. So, as I say, if you feel that there isn't anyone you can vent with, then it might be an idea to have a few sessions with a therapist. That you feel it's really important to find somebody that you feel you can trust and what have you. But yeah, that's something that I did personally.
I think we all need somebody, don't we, that can empathize, hopefully, and has got insights and expertise and experience around the subject to talk this through with. And certainly, I think, for me, my message has come on the back of my mess, so to speak, and I help women that have been through similar abuse and assaults that I've been through, because they know I can empathize with it. So, in some ways, the hurt person that needed healing has now become the healer, and I feel that's the case for you as well.
For sure, absolutely. And I think also it's so important that you can talk to somebody who is non-judgmental, because you're feeling bad yourself. You're feeling bad about yourself. So you don't want anybody else judging you about this thing. And I think that's why, it's hopeless to talk to friends and family, because they're then hearing something from somebody they've no idea. They've no idea about it. I know I have been very, I'm very open about it all now. And I've even had friends from the past who have sent me message and said, oh my God, Marie, I'd no idea. And, why didn't you say? And I just said, it wasn't right at the time, but, I appreciate you reaching out to me just to, say that. But yeah, it's just, you don't want to be judged. You feel so bad that you don't want another form of judgment.
Absolutely. So on that note, Marie, what is your best contact information for those that would like to reach out and get in touch with you and connect?
Well, my main platform is Instagram. So you can find me at Marie Fraser _, and then, there's a link on my bio and connection. So if anybody wants to connect there, that would be, or even follow me, that would be lovely.
Excellent. I'm sure you'll gain definitely lots of extra followers on the back of that. Thank you so much for your insights and wisdom, Marie. Any other closing thoughts before we wrap up the episode?
My closing thoughts are, J.K. Rowling said that rock bottom was the foundation upon which she built the rest of her life. And I truly, truly believe that, because when you are rock bottom, and you feel you're at rock bottom, the only way is up. And I believe in every single one of you that's listening to this podcast, because you're listening to it because you're out there wanting to help yourself. And when you want to help yourself, that's 50% of the battle. So go, everybody.
Love it. Thank you so much, Marie. It's been fabulous again having you on as a guest, and hopefully we'll have you on in future episodes as well.
Thanks ever so much, Lyn. It's always a pleasure. See you next time.
And on that note, I'm just going to leave you with true love starts with opening our hearts. And until next time, goodbye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Hearts Entwined podcast. You can follow Lyn via the Facebook group Two Hearts Entwined, or search Lyn Smith, inspirational speaker, at LinkedIn, or email lyn@hearts-entwined.com. That's LYN@hearts-entwined.com. Remember, true love starts with opening our hearts.